Well, California's budget deficit could cost that state millions more next year. And today, some of the effects of the recession and Proposition 13 appear to catch up with California as Standard & Poor's lowered its bond rating from AA+ to AA. Ken Kashiwahara reports.
California's bond rating was lowered because the state is broke and because the new Republican governor and the Democratic legislature can't agree on what to do about it. The lower bond rating means the state may have to pay bond investors an additional $3 million a year in interest for such projects as prisons and schools. And California already faces a $1.5 billion budget deficit. 5 years ago, the state had a $4 billion surplus before Proposition 13 cut property taxes and tax revenues. But today, Howard Jarvis, leader of the tax revolt, said it's not his fault and endorsed the lower bond rating.
Maybe this will bring some sense to the state government to stop going into debt.
California's new bond rating reflects the financial community's unhappiness with Governor George Deukmejian's plan of budget cuts and borrowing and with his refusal to support a tax increase. But today, Deukmejian said the lower bond rating is not as bad as imposing a $1 billion tax increase on California residents.
I think that they have demonstrated over the last 5 years through their direct votes that they don't want increased taxation.
But the governor's plan is already under fire. Today, University of California students protested a hike in student fees, which the Board of Regents adopted to help lower the budget deficit. And taxpayers are beginning to complain, too, over the possibility that they may get IOUs instead of tax refunds if the budget crisis isn't resolved soon. The lower bond rating may be a warning to other states to get their budget acts together, too. And here in California, the hope is that when the financial community speaks, the governor and the legislature will listen and work out a compromise. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News, San Francisco.
California has money troubles, a budget crunch. The crunch because there is no budget. The governor, the legislature have been unable to agree on one, and until they do, California cannot spend, checks printed cannot be mailed, and that's causing people problems. More from Meredith Lewis.
Already in California, thousands of unemployed workers did not get their benefit checks because the legislature failed to pass a budget. And state employees are having a hard time explaining why.
Because the budget has not been signed, no checks are being issued.
There is a crisis atmosphere among disabled Californians whose checks have also been delayed.
I think our values are insane, and we came out just spontaneously to tell people, hey, one, we are no pawns, that we have thousands of our folks who are on the edge of not surviving out there.
Here's the crux of the dispute. Republican Governor George Deukmejian is opposed to any budget proposal that raises existing taxes. The Democrats insist that California is past due for a tax hike to pay for schools and services. Earlier this week, tempers flared at a meeting in the governor's office, and Assembly Speaker Willie Brown led a walkout.
No one desires to hold out, period. If the governor had responded when we first gave him the contents and the framework of that list almost 3 weeks ago, clearly there would have been a budget on time.
Meanwhile, Janice Williams is temporarily disabled and feels caught in the middle of the dispute.
The people like myself, and I'm sure thousands of others, are sitting home waiting for their disability checks to eat and pay their rent. And for me, that's a big problem, and we're having to go without, and I think it stinks.
There were encouraging signs yesterday that both sides might work out a compromise budget, but they didn't. And while the intense name-calling and bickering has quieted down, no one knows when the budget crisis might be resolved. Meredith Lewis, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And now to California, and this evening an example of the problem, the squeeze facing so many other states across the land, government which does not have the money to provide the services the people want. The choice is higher taxes or fewer services. A very uncomfortable choice for state lawmakers, and their inability to agree has made life uncomfortable for thousands of Californians. Here's Bill Lagatudo.
People in wheelchairs and others who are handicapped picketed in front of the home of California's Governor George Deukmejian this past week, demanding that state checks be issued to the welfare workers who care for them. Debbie Childress is typical. The state pays her $4.25 an hour to care for her ailing mother. When the first of her checks never arrived, she was afraid she couldn't pay the phone bill.
With my mom being crippled, a history of strokes, turning my phone off is going to be, like, totally detrimental to me.
Only 2 days ago did a federal court intervene and order California to issue the checks while the budget battle drags on. Democrats and Republicans led by the governor are nearly $4 billion apart. The Democrats would raise taxes more than $1 billion to end the crisis. The Republicans would cut existing programs.
We are serious when we say no more taxes. I'm prepared to stay here until hell freezes over.
Neither side is budging.
We want some money, now!
Now, state highway workers are angry. They haven't been paid in 2 weeks, and they marched on the governor's office.
We are not slave labor. Payday was last Friday. Give us our pay.
At the State House today, war-weary legislators have gone home for the weekend, except for one, who says he won't leave his desk until the budget is complete.
That may take weeks. In the meantime, the huge state government here creaks on with a lot of angry employees. The answer here in California, as has been the case in 15 other states this year, will likely include the T word, some new taxes. Garrick?
But Bill, politically speaking, are Californians prepared to pay higher taxes for these continued government services they so clearly want?
Well, don't forget, this is the state that 10 years ago launched the property tax revolt. The mood has changed considerably. Just last month, California voters approved a hike in the gasoline tax. This fall, there will be at least 2 other initiatives to raise taxes, and they are given a better than average chance of getting through.
Something is changing in California. Bill Legato, to thank you very much.